Greenland was almost American territory. In 1946, the United States secretly offered Denmark $100 billion in today's money to purchase Greenland. And they nearly said yes. This wasn't just a real estate deal. It was a power grab that would have completely reshaped global history. After analyzing declassified documents and military assessments, I've discovered how the single transaction would have transformed the Cold War, altered modern military strategy, and potentially changed the outcome of conflicts you've lived through. While politicians laughed when Trump proposed buying Greenland in 2019, military strategists weren't laughing at all. They understood what most people don't. Greenland isn't just frozen wasteland. It's the key to controlling the 21st century's most contested region. Today, we're exploring the shocking consequences of what might have been America's most strategically significant land acquisition since the Louisiana Purchase. Most people visualize Greenland as an irrelevant, ice-covered rock, but this common perception couldn't be more wrong. Look at a globe from above the North Pole. Suddenly, the reality becomes clear. Greenland isn't some distant island, but the commanding height of the entire Arctic, perfectly positioned between North America, Europe, and Russia. This isn't just geography, it's strategic dominance. During the Cold War, American military planners were obsessed with Greenland for one primary reason that most history books never mention. It was a perfect platform to monitor and intercept Soviet nuclear missiles coming over the pole. But today, as climate change rapidly melts Arctic ice, Greenland's strategic value isn't just maintaining, it's multiplying exponentially. Here's what's really happening. The melting ice is uncovering two revolutionary shipping routes, the Northwest Passage and the Northern Sea Route. These aren't minor shortcuts, they're game changers that could slash shipping times between Asia, Europe, and America by up to 40%. The economic implications are staggering. Whoever controls these routes essentially controls global trade in the coming decades. But here's an even more critical dimension that few outside military circles discuss. These shipping lanes double as perfect military choke points. The GI-UK gap, the waters between Greenland, Iceland, and the UK, was the critical barrier that kept Soviet submarines from Atlantic access during the Cold War. With direct control of Greenland, America would have dominated the strategic corridor completely, fundamentally altering nuclear deterrence calculations. Consider Thule Air Force Base in northwestern Greenland. Despite being one of America's most important military installations, most Americans have never heard of it. It houses the 21st Space Wing's global network of sensors providing missile warning and space surveillance. If America owned Greenland outright, this wouldn't just be a leased foreign base, it would be the centerpiece of an impenetrable Arctic defense system that would have made missile defense far more effective than it is today. Russia understands this strategic reality with crystal clarity. That's why they've been aggressively militarizing their Arctic territory, reopening Soviet-era bases and deploying new nuclear-capable submarines under the ice. Had America controlled Greenland during the Cold War, this competition would have intensified dramatically, potentially transform the Arctic into the most heavily militarized region on Earth, even more than Central Europe. The strategic shockwaves wouldn't just affect Russia, America's closest ally. Canada would have suddenly found itself particularly encircled by U.S. territory, undermining its own Arctic sovereignty claims. And China, despite having no geographic claim to the Arctic, has declared itself a near-Arctic state, precisely because Beijing recognizes the region's explosive strategic potential. Greenland isn't just land, it's power projection in its purest form. In an alternate timeline when America controlled it, the global security architecture we've lived under for decades would be unrecognizable. The military value of Greenland is just the beginning of the story. What lies beneath Greenland's rapidly melting ice sheet would shock most people. It's potentially the greatest untapped mineral treasure on Earth. Here's a reality few people understand. Greenland contains some of the planet's largest deposits of rare earth metals, the critical components needed for everything from your smartphone and electric vehicles to the most advanced weapon systems and renewable energy technology. These aren't ordinary minerals, they're the foundation of technological supremacy in the 21st century. Currently, China controls approximately 80% of the global rare earth supply, giving Beijing extraordinary leverage over global technology supply chains. This isn't just an economic advantage, it's a strategic vulnerability for the United States and its allies. But Greenland could have completely rewritten this equation. The Kovanfield deposit in southern Greenland contains not just rare earth elements, but also one of the world's largest uranium reserves. This dual deposit represents strategic wealth so valuable that it's difficult to calculate, potentially worth trillions of dollars. If America controlled these resources today, the entire global power dynamic with China would be fundamentally different. Instead of Beijing holding leverage over critical supply chains, Washington would have a secure domestic source of these essential minerals, dramatically strengthening America's technological independence. But extracting these riches presents extraordinary challenges that few outside the mining industry appreciate. Greenland's environment isn't just harsh, it's among the most unforgiving on Earth. Building the necessary infrastructure would require engineering feats beyond anything attempted in the Arctic, costing billions and facing conditions that test the limits of modern technology. The environmental stakes are equally massive. Large-scale mining operations could accelerate the already alarming melting of Greenland's ice sheet, potentially rising global sea levels and triggering ecological consequences that could reach far beyond the Arctic, affecting coastlines worldwide. For Greenland's 56,000 residents, most Inuit, American ownerships would have transformed their homeland and way of life forever. This isn't theoretical. In our timeline, environmental concerns led Greenland to ban uranium mining entirely in 2021, prioritizing ecological protection over billions in potential economic development. But if the U.S. controlled Greenland, national security interests would almost certainly have overridden environmental concerns. The strategic imperative to secure rare earth elements and counter China's resource dominance would have transformed parts of Greenland into extraction zones, creating tension between resources security and environmental protection unlike anything we've ever witnessed. China's growing interest in Greenland's minerals reveals Beijing's strategic thinking. Chinese state-owned companies have already attempted major investments in Greenland's mining sector, only to be blocked by Danish and American intervention. This isn't just business. It's part of China's global strategy to secure the resources needed for technological dominance. In our alternate timeline, where America owned Greenland, China would be completely locked out of these critical resources, potentially accelerating its already aggressive resource acquisition strategy elsewhere and heighten global competition for the critical minerals beyond even today's intensifying levels. American ownership of Greenland wouldn't just recolor the map. It would fundamentally alter the global balance of power, potentially igniting conflicts that would make the Cold War look like a diplomatic misunderstanding. Russia, with its extensive Arctic coastline, would view American control of Greenland as nothing short but of an existential threat, effectively placing NATO forces on another of Russia's borders. Moscow's response would be immediate and severe. In our timeline, Russia has already reopened dozens of Soviet-era Arctic bases and deployed nuclear submarines beneath the ice. With America controlling Greenland, this militarization would have accelerated exponentially. The Arctic Ocean would have become the new flashpoint of global conflict, a contested waterway where Russia and American warships regularly challenged territorial claims, conducting provocative freedom of navigation operations that could spiral into direct confrontation with little warning. Russian nuclear submarines, operating silently beneath the Arctic ice, would constantly test American defenses around Greenland, creating a high-stakes underwater chess game where miscalculations could trigger catastrophic consequences. Submarine detection technology would have become even more critical than it was during the Cold War's most dangerous moments. But Russia wouldn't be the only nation forced to respond. Canada, America's closest ally, would suddenly find its Arctic sovereignty caught in a strategic vice between Alaska and American Greenland. The Northwest Passage, which Canada claims as internal waters, would be effectively surrounded by U.S. territory, fatally undermining Canadian control of this increasingly valuable shipping route. The geographic reality would have strained the U.S.-Canadian relationship to breaking points, potentially forcing Ottawa to seek new diplomatic and security arrangements to counterbalance overwhelming American dominance in the region. The factoring of this critical partnership would have permanently altered North American security dynamics. China, meanwhile, would find itself completely excluded from a region it has spent billions to influence. Beijing's response would combine economic corrosion, diplomatic isolation efforts, and sophisticated influence operations designed to undermine American control of Greenland and its strategic resources. The internal situation in Greenland itself could become explosive in ways few anticipate. The native Inuit population, suddenly under American governance, might strongly resist outside control of their ancestral homeland. American ownership could spark independent movements, civil disobedience, or even armed resistance, creating a complex sovereignty crisis in a region critical to global security. Foreign adversaries would certainly exploit this unrest, providing covert support to anti-American movements in Greenland and transforming the territory into a proxy battlefield for global influence. Similar to Cold War conflicts in other regions, but now playing out in America's newest territory. As these tensions escalated, Greenland's critical infrastructure, particularly the vital early warning systems at Thule Air Base, would become prime targets for increasingly sophisticated cyber attacks. The digital vulnerability of these remote Arctic installations would create unprecedented security challenges for American defense planners. What began as a territorial acquisition would potentially spiral into a new Cold War centered on the Arctic, a frozen conflict with the potential to thaw into something far more dangerous at any moment. The purchase that seemed strategically brilliant could ultimately trigger the very conflicts it was meant to prevent. The 1946 offer to buy Greenland wasn't just a diplomatic curiosity, it was a pivotal moment where history nearly took a dramatically different path. The strategic position, vast resources, and geopolitical implications of American Greenland would have created ripple effects that would still be reshaping our world today. As Arctic ice continues melting at unprecedented rates and nations race to claim the resources beneath, Greenland remains at this epicenter of an emerging global competition. NATO's former Supreme Alliance Commander Philip Breedlove captured this reality perfectly when he stated that guaranteeing a Western-leaning Greenland is extremely important to global security. This raises profound questions about our future. As climate change transforms the Arctic from frozen wasteland to strategic prize, will competition for territories like Greenland determine the next global power structure? Could conflicts over resources and shipping routes in the high north become the defining struggles of the coming decades? History rarely follows straight lines. It pivots on decisions that seem minor at the time, but cascade through generations. The story of America's attempt to buy Greenland reminds us that the map we know isn't predetermined. It's a result of choices with consequences that echo through time. As the Arctic opens and great power competition intensifies, will we see renewed attempts to control this strategic territory? Some alternate histories never truly fade away. They just wait for the right conditions to become reality. What alternate timeline are we creating today through decisions that might seem insignificant? And as the world's attention increasingly turns northward, will Greenland once again become the focus of great power ambitions? If this exploration of history's turning points fascinates you, hit subscribe for more alternate histories that change everything you thought you knew about our world. And share your thoughts in the comments. Should America have purchased Greenland when it had the chance? How would that decision have reshaped the world you live in today?